Hello hero, it's Lucy Lannon. Hold up a sec, I'm going to get a quick thumbnail. Yeah, something like that. I feel like Debbie McGee. Couple of announcements before we begin. I'm going to put these on because it really is a bright beam, right? I'll tell you the reason we're in orange light in a minute, if you don't already know. But blimey, I don't want to be seeing cyan all week. This is much better. Let's clear the lenses, shall we? Okay, firstly, if you see anything floating past your screen, it's not an orb. We're not being besieged by the good folk. It's that I've been looking after two very, very fluffy rabbits all week, wearing a rabbit hat to assert dominance, insert picture. But basically, that means that my entire house is fluffy. I've tried the best of my clothes. I don't think they are fluffy anymore, but if anything drifts past the lens, I truly am sorry. Equally, if I start hacking during the reading, I'm just coughing up a fur ball. It's nothing to be worried about. But I feel like I need to say before we start, just because my entire day it's like, oh, there's rabbit fur in my food. Oh, great, there's rabbit fur in my bathroom for some reason. Anyway, aside from that, from the time that you're seeing this, which, you know, all tentacles crossed, etc., is the time that I want to upload it. My shop is on hold on Etsy. That's just a holidays thing. It's just so I can move house and take care of some Christmas stuff. But if you did want to book with me, highly encourage, obviously. And if you want to bookmark the site instead of booking, stuff will resume in January. And also from early January, I will have sales on. I think I'm going to do 10% off throughout the month, just to kind of make up for any time that I did have off in December. So, getting back to the subject of your reading, we're in the orange section of our spectral navigations. We are moving through the rainbow, through the colour wheel, taking mystery messages from each colour beam as it finds us, and sort of working with words that I associate with colour magic from each part of the spectrum. So today with orange, I'm going to talk you through which words we're choosing a little bit. If you want to skip through that, you can pick your pile now, but honestly, I would suggest that you sort of stay around for it just because you get a better idea of what working with orange entails, what we're here for this week, and yeah, just stuff along those kinds of lines. This whole thing will be live, so there will be like little patches between piles, etc. But I wanted to give you guys an idea of what that's like because normally it is a very overhead kind of cut and paste affair with my readings. And this is more like what you'd get if you booked with me on Zoom or whatever, which is going to come back next year. So the first two piles, orange we associate with Halloween. Now there's a reason for that. Orange is big, you know what I'm going to say because it's this channel and it's all my branding, it's big trickster energy, right? I can't give you a monochromatic or achromatic reading based on lighting, etc. because obviously I can't reproduce black as a form of lighting and I can't light myself in grey, right? But many of you know sort of between left hand and right hand paths that there is a grey way. That's not just sort of speaking morally or in terms of being betwixt paradigms, but just between polarities of any kind. There is always a third form. So in popular culture, this is like Gandalf the White becoming Gandalf the Grey, or the Grey Jedi, or just any kind of outsider figures that come in that offend both extremes of an idea, piss off the whole town, hello trickster, and turn everything upside down by virtue of being there. So orange is the vibe of like Mark Twain's Mysterious Stranger. He's the trickster in all literature and all mythology. He's between the energy that I mentioned, I think it's in my N is 4 reading, but I'll link down below which one it was, of like the Aries North Node differentiation quality, where we're sort of pursuing passions based on the personality, and that's a very red vibe. And then over in yellow, which also mixes with red to create orange, you've got more of a mercurial energy, more of a kind of Thoth Hermes thing going on. It's all to do with very swift communications, with the intellect, with all of those positive qualities that we will explore when we go into yellow. So to merge those two things, the energies of differentiation and the energy of communication, but also liminality, because yellow is so often about spaces, right? The back rooms, the yellow wallpaper, all that kind of stuff. You're getting that kind of strangeness that we speak about with yellow, but you're putting it into an individual with the red being there, with the Aryan energy. So you're you're making the weirdness about the figure and not about the environment. And for that reason, we do associate it with Halloween, and we do associate it with trickery, and it's very sort of brash and brassy to a lot of people. It's very offensive. There's a long history, particularly with the church, of shunning people with red, i.e. orange hair, right? We think of redheads in a sort of Judeo-Christian paradigm as being the other, the outsider, in an uncomfortable fashion, in league with the devil, etc., which is all, you know, it's just a nice way of saying you don't obey right now. And sort of, I mean, redheads also have been associated with being strumpets, and I think that's quite interesting, right? Because we're working with the sacral chakra and sacred sexuality and stuff like that. We also have this thing of orange encompassing, it's both the jumpsuit of the convict and the robes of the monk, right? And in both of those things, there's an energy of sacred renunciation of past patterns, maybe like a redemptive quality. Orange is the grand transformer, the catalyst, which is why it's got such a close relationship to grey, but without being quite the same thing, because grey is grounding. Orange also encompasses brown, which, you know, all those grounding associations, tree work, tree mythology. It's the colour underpinning every skin tone, whether you're warm or cool, because all of us, whether we're completely ivory or a very deep chocolate, are somewhere on that spectrum of creams to browns and all that sort of stuff. That's all under the orange umbrella. So in a weird way, it's kind of a colour that we see very often and that we should be very used to, and yet orange stands out culturally as something that people consider like too much, too clownish, right? And when we say clownish, we're talking about sacred harlequins, sacred tricksters, fool card energy. Again, like a mercurial quality, but mixed with Uranian, revolutionary energy. It's the colour that says, no, fuck all of this, fuck all of y'all. I'm doing what it is that I want. And it's going to piss everybody off, but everybody around me that sees me doing it is going to rethink their own shit because of the nature of me doing that. This is also why orange, as well as being in the creative chakra, is associated so keenly with the arts, right? Because when it's at its best, art challenges, it brings about emotions in us which challenge the current ways of thinking in an interesting fashion, or encourage the imaginative in an otherwise obedient culture. And I feel like that plays into the creative aspect, as well as orange just being literal creativity and literal sex, right? Explore more of that in my orange-red kind of readings, because, again, verging on reddier oranges are more sexual, whereas more yellow oranges are more speaking to that creative side. We've also got a childlike element, an inner child element, a playfulness energy, again with the sacred trickster, the sacred clown. Orange is clownish, it's why people don't wear it really, unless they're badasses or in the fifth element or whatever. Again, there's a reason why it was the fifth element, right? It was the outlying thing. But yeah, it's all this kind of it's very fun, it's very playful, again, Halloween-y, right? But it's also the thing that is the outsider, the interloper, the Jarmushian figure coming in from out of town and making everybody feel mildly uncomfortable with the way that things have been running because of the way that they turn up and the kinds of things that they say and do. Fox energy, which links to coyote in the trickster myths, and sort of mirrors that across the world in different ways. It's a big Baba Yaga vibe. It's sort of, I keep going back to Halloween, but Halloween is like the thinning of the veil kind of time, and orange really does speak to that because it's associated with figures who have one foot in one place and one foot in another and don't really give a fuck where you think they should belong. And as I say, it's in a redemptive fashion. It's in a way of healing both sides. It's not let's scrap everything and just do the orange thing and forget what we've learned. It's more like a process of integration whereby both sides are understood and heard, but something in the middle usually fucks up in the mythologies, right? Usually does something that is messy for themselves and all concerned, but in a way that demonstrates to everybody else, this stuff you've been doing is not working, right? We need a more creative way. We need to invent a new path. So it's like King Solomon, sort of splitting the baby in half, that narrative, but it's also Coyote eating his own eyeballs and shitting everywhere. And Nancy, telling stories about things falling out of trees and falling out of trees himself, and all these kinds of lovely things that mesh together very well. I associate it with Baba Yaga very strongly because it's also this, like, in the same way that she can be an initiator and a donor, is what they call it in sort of anthropological terms, like a kindly figure to the tales. She can grant wishes, etc., etc. She's also the origins of many hag tales where the witch eats the children, right? The sort of, she's the Slavic version of the Hansel and Gretel archetype that gives us the wicked crone. Whether or not that you think that those things migrated into Germany from those regions is kind of up for grabs, I guess, and is for people more scholarly than I. But certainly there's a thread through, beginning in Russia, and indeed earlier than that in China, of these sort of hag-type figures that then goes up and across and into Germany and into the UK, and sort of paints them, with the advent of Christianization, it paints them more harshly, but they are usually a bit of both, right? Orange is about being a bit of both. This is why I compare it to grey. I think I've gone on long enough about orange there, but it'll explain the piles to you, which are trick, treat, and creativity, right? I meant to tackle them individually, but you just got a big whole speech, and I guess that's for the better, right? We're just going with it. We're in the orange Uranian mood. It's fine. So the trick cards will be, and we open on the full. This will be the Neon Moon, which I'm not massively familiar with in terms of the world building involved. I know that this entire deck has like an expanded cyberpunk universe. I'd love to tap into that in further videos, but today it was just very immediate and said, I want to be involved. I was going to choose the Technobrae, and then this one said, no, it's me. So I apologise if like Pixel Occult is watching this, or anybody else who's really into this deck, and they're like, you don't understand that credits aren't called credits in this universe and this character does this. I do want to learn all of that, but right now it's just, it wants to be involved, so I'm going to interpret it as is. Trick is the pile for trickster work. It's the pile for anything tricky, anything that's been difficult to deal with, any cycles that you're coming out of with a new understanding of absolutely everything, which is a very orange vibe, as discussed. Anything where you're sort of flitting between genres at a high rate, right? You're sort of doing one thing, then doing another thing, then doing another thing, then doing another thing. It's also your pile for glamour work and sort of anything that involves manipulation on a physical level, or social engineering, or anything that is a trick or a con. But I don't know which of these things is going to come up yet because it's all live. So any of those, and you're in the Neon Moon pile. Treat. This one, let's see. Oh, we're opening on the Page of Cups. This is the Blood Tarot. The reason I chose it for treat is because it was a treat to myself. For those of you who don't know, the artist who created this deck used her own blood to make these kind of Rorschach-y type images over a very long period. And this was a deck that was funded on Kickstarter and has finally become a reality. And my, it is beautiful, right? My inner Dexter, like analysing splatter patterns, loves this. My inner Vampy goth childhood loves this. But also it is just a fantastic deck in terms of like oracular value from the imagery, but also just being a good tarot. I'm going to stop praising it now and say that treat is about anything where you are treating yourself, or life is treating you. The universe is giving you something that you've wanted for a long time. Sorry about that, my phone treated me to an update via... Does anybody else get the things from Samsung that are like Bixby or something? It's really annoying. Anyway, yeah, the treat pile is essentially about anything the universe is treating you to that you can feel coming or that you feel is here, or anything you would like to treat yourself to, any of those kinds of things. It's just the nice pile, right? Because I don't know what's happening with these guys. This is the like, hey, a treat, a nice treat. Some sweeties on Halloween, etc. And then this one, creativity. This is going to be the one that's familiar to many of you, the Sandman-friendly DC Vertigo deck. There's your cups card for that. And yeah, this is going to talk about anyone who's involved in the arts, making anything at the moment, wants to be creative in terms of anything from writing a book to making a child. You know, it's the whole spectrum right here, right now. I don't know what it's going to be addressing, but that is your pile. I think I've rambled for long enough. Let's get to pile one, shall we? My. You can feel that vocal yellow energy coming in, right? I don't normally talk about things for quite that long. Jeezy crazy. Ooh. That's a good shuffling sound right there. I am doing reversals as well. Tricks on you. Reversals aren't a bad thing. I don't know why everybody's so bloody scared of them. It's like, if you've actually done your tarot training, you know, it's just another 78 meanings. It's not too bad. This guy wants to come out already. Excellent stuff. Right, let's properly shuffle you. This is not the easiest for my tiny hands. Oh, no, it was just me being an idiot. Right, trick. I hear you. Trick. All right. You don't need to be so tricky, man. Final one for trick, thank you. Okay, so we have the moon card. I love this artwork. It's so good, man. Then we have the supervisor of wires. The ace of vials. Oh, we've got two. The apprentice of wires. It was a trick on me as well. And the two of arms in reverse. Okay. So, there's a feeling of instability at the minute. You might feel a bit werewolfy. I'm getting that from this image. Again, I don't know the mythology of this deck as accurate as I should just yet, but I will go into that. But certainly there is a wolfish vibe to this card. There's a feeling of your own impulses being out of control. I'm also seeing that some of the windows in the background have alchemical elements and astrological symbols. So you may have been looking towards hermetics or astrology to kind of figure out what it is that's been causing this thing. With supervisor of wires in there, there may have been like an energy of impulsiveness. You may have been rushing into some stuff. I'm seeing the cat on this person's visor as well. So there's like a pleasure impulse, but it's counter to what it was that you were originally going after. With the Ace of Vials, this might be a bit of a love reading, or certainly to do with something where you would be offering a great deal of love to somebody. But then the fact that we've got a supervisor and an apprentice, it's like you don't quite feel qualified for this relationship, or it feels like a bit of trickery going on. I'm seeing that this person is very isolated, and this kind of, I think it would be magenta, but it's glowing orange in this light, but this area around their head is like being stuck in your thoughts. And this should be a much more kind of onesie energy. You know, wires is electricity, right? But it's instead this like rumination that feels almost swordsy. And then we've got the Two of Arms, which is the Two of Swords in reverse. So it's like indecision, but leading specifically to a blockage. It's very like, it's very oppressive. It is a trick, right? It's, I think if you've come here exploring that you've been working with a tricky energy or like a contract or something with like a trickster figure, there is a feeling that like you would love for that to be a more in-depth relationship, but at the minute it's blocked by a lack of creativity or a lack of It's almost like you can't get into the flow of this. You can't get into... If I'm speaking to my craft practitioners, there's a need to be experiential with this that's been clouded by, I say the logical, but more the sort of correspondency. It's like you're in your head and you're doing the armchair magician thing instead of being quite as relaxed into what I would call like genuine witchcraft, like the experiential component of things like trance, things like hedge riding, etc. Those might not be the words that you would use within your paradigm, but it's, you know, most broadly, there is something here that you're trying to get to, whether it's the understanding of a relationship or a closer relationship to a deity or an entity, that is being blocked by your tendency to become logical about the process rather than being able to get into flow. For some of you, this is related to trying, what's the word? Is it entheogens? The sort of trying substances to get you into a particular state, and it's not really working for you. It's not the best path for that. And it's almost like that's pushed you back into your head because it's not working. But I don't think it's that you can't get into the energy of receptivity and understanding, into the dreaming, if you like. I feel like it's more that that the approach that you've taken knocks you further into logic somehow. It's very strange. And there is this like, there's an indecision, but with this particular imagery, it's like you've blindfolded yourself. For some of you, you're doing like sensory deprivation stuff because you've blindfolded yourself to the realities of the situation, almost to get a better idea of the intuitive aspects of it, which is why you're coming to me, presumably, because I feel like you are quite intuitive. You might even be a reader, but like you're coming from the point of wanting to be totally in flow and not, how do I want to say this? Come on. With this like werewolfy vibe to the moon card, you want to get more into your like animalistic, or what you see as animalistic, your kind of true nature, below all the civilization that's, or civilizing elements, should I say, that have kind of conditioned you one way or another. You want to get to the crux of the matter. And I say, you know, for some of you, this is in terms of a relationship and in terms of understanding what the connection is. But for many of you, this is in a magical sense or a spiritual sense. You want to get past all the conditioning bullshit and into the truth. But the way that you've gone about it is like, it's almost like you followed somebody else's instructions to be entirely mystical and they've not worked for you as a person. So you're almost like saying they don't work in general. And I'm here to tell you that that's not the case at all. It's not that you can't be more feeling it out energetically and more trance-based. It's that the way that you've gone about that has almost been too methodical and it's not correct for you. And I do feel that you've almost like cut yourself off from any intellectual influence, from any correspondences, etc., for a little while with this too, to try and make the decision of how it is that you go forward in a much more intuitive sense. So where I spoke about, you know, hermetics, astrological paradigms, all that kind of stuff, it's almost like you've distanced from those things in order to try and become more instinctive. Perhaps you've gone down more of like a, I want to say like an indigenous witchcraft practice with more of a sort of methodically shamanic bent to it than a sort of ceremonial pathway, or something which is very like, you do this and then you do this and then this deity appears to you but it looks like this, so expect that, right? And you've sort of taken the very orange spirit of going, no, let's not do that, which is correct for you, but it's almost like this has pushed you further into your own head. The one that wanted to come out next, oh wow, is the magician reversed, right? So he looks like that, but also like that. Because of the way that he looks, I'm thinking of Miller from The Expanse. So that may have been something that you've been watching recently, or you may just... The thing that's interesting to me about Miller, and I am a big fan, is that he comes from the realm of the not the logical, but again of obedience of the law, right? And he's pushed into the realm of the experiential and into following both like a love connection, spoilers, but also a more intuitive way of handling things and a more sort of risky way of being in a tricksterish style through what happens to him regarding the proto-molecule, which is very fitting for this deck, right? But it's also a sense of like, yes, you're blocked as a magician for many of you, but that's because you came from something that was very step by step and you're moving into something which nobody can tell you how to do, right? Present company included. Like I'm giving you feedback as to what you might be feeling, but I'm not really saying, and this is your next step yet. Or not in as exact a way as you're perhaps desiring. I can't tell you how to perform magic. I can't tell you how to exert your force of will over your circumstances. And if you're not magically affiliated and this is a love reading, and this card's coming out in case, then just know that this is like, there is a connection that's bothering you because you don't know what the purpose of it would be, because you're very concerned with what the purpose of everything is. And you want to get into passionate wires energy. You want to get into feeling sexy and feeling sumptuous and connecting with this person on a really deep, profound kind of a level. But it's almost like you're stuck in the idea of, yeah, but why though? Why them? Or why this? And it's holding you up. And I want to say that with the Magician reversed, it's because this whole connection partly is here to open you up to new ways of understanding and doing things in that aspect of your life. So for some of you, that's in your magical life. For some of you, that's in your love life. But it's like, this was meant to throw you for a loop, to open you up to the idea that there is a way of operating in any field that is more to do with you as a person and what you feel your next move should be in a very adaptive, happy orange way that again moves through lots of different things in one movement, shall we say. And it's like you haven't been doing that because you've been looking for outside answers. This resonates with one of my personal readings I've done recently as well, so hi if you're here. But it's this thing of like looking outside of yourself for validation that the next step you've taken is the correct one, when actually you're now empowered sufficiently that there is no next correct step on this path. Or that if there is, you will know what it is better than anyone else will, because you're no longer operating under their value systems. I hope this is making any kind of sense to any of you. Very general, very broad reading for a lot of people, but hey ho. Okay, so we've got a 6 of vials. So something is significant regarding your past, regarding your childhood, perhaps regarding a figure that you knew in childhood. If you're working with deity or entity, there is something connected to the way that you grew up, which would be very useful in considering this again. So those of you who work with like folkloric stuff, maybe you heard stories about something specific as a kid, or maybe there are paradigms that you picked up in childhood that need bashing through in order for you to get to this kind of state of the magician upright and magical equilibrium, and sort of knowing the way to go from a, oh, what's the word, guys? Bring me the word, please. From a, it's just like you need to know where to go from a self-directed kind of a way, and not from what other people think would your next step would be. Because if you took their next step, it would be their journey, right? It's not, it's yours. And I've been told to split the deck and pick this next top one. So let's do that, and then let's get a clarifier for it. We are in the Agent of Zent, which is the, is that the King of Pentacles? I believe so, yeah. There we go. But he was in reverse. So there's something here that is, if this is a magical reading, this is affecting your money as well. This is like the block in this, and then your creativity is affecting the flow of income. With Zent being like the equivalent to credits. And then we've got Death reversed. So you're resisting some kind of change here. The wonderful Death card is very Akira. Yeah, there's something that you're not accepting about this. Death reverse makes me think of like, again, magical reading, not love reading for this section, but it's like if you're working with deity or you're doing stuff with contacts, there is something that has entered your astral or your dreamscape or something like that, which has a big death vibe, which has a big metamorphosis energy, and I think it may have scared you. I think it may have stopped you from pursuing things with quite the speed that you were, because we're in a very fast energy today. Or you're working with like a death entity, and it's almost like you don't want to go ahead with something. What is this? There's a papal figure in the background that you're going past. So some of you may be sort of outgrowing some of the after effects of Christianization in childhood, which is this 6. Yeah, it's like you're speeding away from everything you thought was true, which is why you've hit upon orange, right? It wouldn't surprise me for this pile if this is your first of my colour readings, because I've not done something quite as spiritually honed in before. So this is like you coming new to my channel and finding this. And it may be with this agent of Zen that it's like your resistance to moving forward with this because it's frightening, or because it's dealing with stuff you don't normally deal with, or just because it's like you need to get over that block of like, yeah, you'll need to let some things go, dude, because it's a death card. The resistance to the movement is how it relates to your finances, and it's almost like one will sort out the other. So if you can sort out your money, I think that the magical stuff will follow, or the relationship stuff if that resonated. Or if you can sort out the way that you're approaching this, I think suddenly you'll come into a patch of abundance where perhaps you were maybe in poverty mindset, or you were struggling financially, as many of us are at this time, you know. There's something to that. What's this next, dude? You've got the Fool in reverse, right? So this is about the extent to which you are willing to take risks. Again, it's like the death reversed energy, but it's just a confirmation. It's like an accent on it saying, yes, that was the thing. And if you were resonating with a love reading rather than a magical or spiritual reading, this is like, you think it would be too risky to step forward in a new way. There is a sense that this connection could be a soulmate thing or a thing from childhood with the 6, and it's almost like you don't want to damage a pre-existing relationship by acting the fool, but that is exactly what you're being encouraged to do, because the Fool in reverse is far less amenable than the Fool upright. This is clarified by the 4 of Arms. So I mean, someone's meditating very directly in that room, right? Yes, they're surrounded by defensive measures, but they're also just surrendering to what it is that's going on inside them. And you can see the circuitry coming over their shoulders. That's almost like, what's the word for those beautiful shoulder pad things in armour? I'll put it if I remember it, but it's almost like a hug coming from behind, an enveloping warmth that is like, if you just let go and if you just trust us in this, you are protected, you are kind of snuggled from the back, right? If it's a love reading, you may identify with that feeling of like being the little spoon in some way, or sort of being wrapped up in somebody. But with them, it's like they're meditating, but their face is not visible. Some of you are doing work with, I don't want to say possession work directly, because it feels like you're too nervous for that shit just yet, especially with death reversed, but you're doing self-transformation stuff. So like when I said werewolf, like some of you are doing things where you're shifting your identity literally in the mirror, and then sort of meditating and going about using that and doing it maybe as like an invocation of stuff that wants to work with you, or a scrying method or something like that. I feel it's significant that this guy's face isn't visible while he's meditating. It's almost like saying the way that you've put forward your spiritual or your magical identity in the past is now in flux. It's now up for debate. Not up for debate. It's up for alteration, right? You're letting go of who you were. Again, with the thing in the beginning about monks and renunciation of a former lifestyle, right? The head shave. There's a reason that Buddhist monks did it and that Crowley did it and all this sort of stuff. It's like, it's the losing your physical identity and personality and kind of shaking all of that off in order to get to a position where you can just receive, be that informationally or just in terms of forming contacts that will become contracts, or forming allegiances to things that are bigger than yourself. Or even like if you don't associate with a strictly magical paradigm, but you see meditation as coming into union with the nature of the universe, then this is very much like a dissolution of who it is that you see yourself as, separate from the world separate, right? Swords, arms are always about differentiation. They're about categorization. I'm splitting this thing with my sword because this is different to this other. And there's a sense with meditation that you can lose that differentness. You can just sort of accept that there is no you. There is no spoon, is what I'm hearing. That your face and the face of everybody around you kind of blend together in an interesting way if you can descend into yourself more. And I'm seeing, despite the light being orange, I'm seeing a lot of blue in these decks, which is about descent. So it's, yeah, it's sort of, again, it's this thing of, can you let go of the identity that you've clung to, and of the rationalization and even of the thoughts that are drifting past you, in order to just dissolve. I think it's that dissolving feeling is kind of almost what you're against, which is weird because on the one hand you've got this werewolf thing of, I want to transform into something different. I want to see something, excuse me, hiccups because I'm channeling. I want to see something different presenting as myself. And you may have been very drawn to this idea of Orange and the Trickster, but at the same time, there's a hesitancy to let your current identity go enough to get into true Wire's energy and out of what appears to be a much more swordsy thing. I think whether this is love or magic, you would do well to meditate regularly, and to the point where you start to feel a bit uncomfortable with it, where you start to feel a bit like you're losing your sense of consciousness and it's becoming broader and more expansive. And I want to say that, like, surrendering to that doesn't mean that you're going to be unsafe. I think there's a real concern with there being so many swords in your apartment on this card, and there being the, like I say, the enveloping circuitry, the hug from beyond. It's almost like, will I be safe with this thing? Again, with Miller and the proto-molecule, it's like you're letting something take over and you're seeing it at the moment as parasitic, but actually it could be the transformation of you into a different state that has a broader utility, right? If you've seen all of The Expanse or read all of The Expanse, you know that Miller becomes a more important figure from his transmutation into something else, which is via a process which isn't ideal. There's something to that. It's like, are you actually ready to let go? Are you, though? And particularly those of you who identify with the word witch, like, that word's been appropriated to all fuckery on Pinterest, on TikTok, on Instagram. With each witchcraft revival of recent years, with each American Horror Story series, we've seen a more diluted and closed in, very sort of Wiccan paradigm version of it. But the pre-Gerald Gardner, much older kind of idea of the witch was somebody whose craft is very much experiential and in communion with things that are that have their own whims of wills and don't really give a shit what yours are. So there is this sense of letting go and surrendering to that, and this idea of safety coming into that, and like the feeling of, I can't do it at a subconscious level because I don't feel safe. And again, I'm pulled back to, if this Ace of Vials was that this is a love reading, it's like, do you feel that you'd be safe in a relationship? Do you feel that you'd be ready for it? Are you willing to be observed as the full person that you are, with all of your separate components playing out, right? Are you willing to be seen? Like, you're offering love, but are you willing to receive it and to be acknowledged as a whole person, including your sort of lunar fluctuations, your not so great side, your not so great moods? Are you willing for the person that you so desire to see you in a rough patch? And again, this is very, very directly relating to a personal reading that I did recently, but it's like this willingness to be loved in return requires that you accept your whole self, and that you sort of dissolve the different selves that you might edit or not edit into one component being, and say, like, no, this whole thing is me. This thing that I'm proud to present to you, and this thing that I'm not proud to present to you. This thing that works intellectually, this thing that also works intuitively. This thing that's into spiritual paradigms when that's not the narrative consensus of the world, right? or indeed for some of you of your friends, your careers, etc. Right? Are you maybe having a bit of an awakening in that sense, and you're afraid of a relationship because it's like, well, what will that mean for that stuff? Because I can't keep it secret any longer. If I'm truly in union with somebody, I can't keep it quiet that I go for these kooky tarot readings from a girl with a fucking overlook hat. 10 of Zen. So this is a reversal of the kind of maximum credits that we can attain. So again, there's a blockage in money very involved here. I don't know whether that's like factoring in with a love thing, but there is a sense of, I mean, and I'm seeing that these TVs with the Zents on them connect to the wires, and these wires, this fiery electrical energy is something that's running through the whole reading. It's like the transmission of the message that for your money to improve, your creativity and your surrender need to improve first. And they are the things that even exhibit money to you. On a much larger level, the money is like the simulation of the state of being receptive. That's only going to make sense to some of you. But it's like the money is to use New Age language, the money is the after product, the byproduct of the work in the 5D, manifesting in the 3D, right? The money is, it's a screener at this point for how it is that you've been relating to the universe. And this guy's got his back to me. He doesn't want to hear about this shit. He doesn't want to know. And he's viewing like what looks like, I don't know whether it's like a street view or a hologram, but in this light, the orange beam, it looks like he's viewing a hologram of a couple. It's like, again, these are all projections of possible realities. You could be rich, you could have a legacy, you could be in a relationship. But what's true is the man and his position in the city, which is actually very lonely. And he's sat with the dog, which brings me back to the fool figure. It's like, you're going to have to do this on your own, and you're going to have to make your own decisions with it. You may have a companion in the spiritual sense, because that's what the dog of the fool represents for me. The sort of, for me it's a fox, right? It's a trickster figure. But in a broader sense, you will be on your own with this. And whether your TV screens show you the money or show you the relationship or whatever it is that you've had difficulty in manifesting is really more about your attitude to the whole thing, and whether or not you see yourself as alone, position yourself as alone, or whether you view this as a holographic universe, right? For some of you, if you haven't read The Field, you need to, because that will help you to understand that these things are just kind of just the ways that other broader things show up, right? And that works from a scientific paradigm as well, or I think it does anyway. 9 of Arms, wow. And what a humdinger that is in the upright, right? But it's in reverse. Again, blockage. There's a sense of psychic surgery with this. There's surgical implements and it feels like torture. And there's, again, all the astrological symbols that we encountered here that have made you feel trapped in correspondences, perhaps trapped in a deterministic and predictive worldview as well. But she's got a tube directly into her head at this and into the neck, which is a point of vulnerability and sort of to do with flexibility as well when we're analysing illness in the body as manifestation of internal condition, etc. So it's like there's a psychic imposition of stuff that you don't want to be in that system. I really feel for many of you that you've been operating within a system of spirituality or witchcraft which is imposing its tyranny upon you, and I think you may have come to it with love and with interest, and it may have suited you for a long time, but it's now this feeling of it's trapping you in this capsule and it's sort of doing its surgery on you, trying to extract pieces of you which don't fit into that thing. So for some of you, you may have been in like a coven or a group and like people that you've been working with are starting to get pissy because you're not quite behaving in the way that the group thinks is the correct truth. But I suspect if you're in an orange reading, you know that truth is relative and you know that it's very subjective and the sort of, what is it? The nothing is true, everything is permitted kind of a paradigm is more suited to you. this kind of Crowley meets Spare thing of neither, and looking at things. It's my favourite Ramsay Jukes sort of paraphrase / quote ever, but Gordon White reiterated it the other day as well. Looking at things in terms of their utility and not in terms of their objective truth or their value as a truth, right? I think you've been pissing people off with this, or you perceive that you would piss people off with it if you came back from your, experiential vision questing or whatever, your hedge riding, and you sort of came back to the groups that you used to operate with. It's almost like you feel that they'd be offended because some of the findings that you're coming back with don't fit into the whole. But I'm here to tell you that you pick the trickster pile, and the whole fucking point of that archetype is that nothing can develop if everything fits into what has already existed. If you come back from your expeditions, your astral journeys or whatever, and you come back with the same information as everybody else, seeing the same beings, wearing the same stuff, saying the same phrases, and doing the same stuff with it, I'm afraid that that's not actually spiritual development, that's spiritual reiteration. Some of you need to hear that, especially if you have been sort of armchair magicians and you're now afraid of taking that next step into the void, right? Really, really into the void. And I think you've got too much concern in a way with how other people are going to react to your new spirituality before it's even fully formed, before it's had the chance to even gestate, never mind actually sort of come into being. To take it back, if this was a love reading, and I do apologise if you're like, what is she going on about? I was here to ask about my boo. But this is a sense of like, certainly anxiety, particularly at night, possible nightmares, feeling trapped, feeling hemmed in by what other people want to extract from your love life, what other people want to extract from you, as opposed to what it is that you would be going after. This may be affecting your prosperity, it may be affecting your legacy. You may also have concerns about whether or not you're going to produce children. You might be somebody who's of an age where that stuff is starting to sort of crop up for you or come in, or other people are concerned about that stuff. And it's very much on your mind, like when you're thinking about whether you'll enter union with a person, because I do feel it's not quite there yet. There are concerns here about legacy, and also about like what it is that you have to sacrifice of yourself, what you have to surgically extract, if you like, in order to be the correct partner or to achieve this in what you feel is half the time or whatever it is, right? There's this, I'm seeing all these knife blades, and it's like you're sort of cutting parts of yourself out to be broadly appealing to the sorts of people that you would want to be with. And yet you're feeling the wounding of that. You're feeling that that is not exactly where you want to be. And you, again, I said this in a private reading very recently, maybe you, but if you're having to extract parts of yourself in order to be with somebody, they're not your person. I know, right? They may have been here to teach you the lesson about extraction. The same is true of a magical path, actually. Like if you have to censor rather than integrate parts of yourself in order to be on a particular spiritual journey, if you have to eradicate stuff rather than integrate it and heal it, because the two vibes are different, then that is not your pathway. And I think you may just be discovering this at the moment. I'm just going to briefly take a break, 2 seconds. I'm back. I sometimes take these breaks and I never know until I've taken them sort of why it is that I've been called to, but that was an emergency one. And indeed it was an emergency. Firstly, I got some posts that would have interrupted the reading anyway, but also my phone was running out of charge. So the first message to come from this little break was that if you are in spiritual services of any kind, you are undercharging, right? Or I dare say if you just came for a love reading, you are undercharging for something, and that is part of the problem here. This little break also gave me a chance to revise my supervisors versus apprentices versus agents, and come to the realisation that this agent of Zen is actually the Knight of Pentacles, which makes me think that there is slow progress. I mean, obviously we've spoken about slow progress in terms of spiritual, not development, but, you know, moving forward with the next spiritual stage. But also, if this is a love reading, I get the feeling that whoever it is that identifies as the sacred masculine, and I say that without being compet, I know that we're not all in relationships involving men, etc. But the person that is the more sort of solar active energy in this is being a slowpoke, and that's part of the frustration. And indeed, there is an equal disparity. But there's another disparity over here between the supervisor and apprentice, where they're of the same suit, they're of the same ilk, they're both dealing in this kind of electricity, this chemistry, but one of them is at a much further stage of maturation, represented by the queen, and the other one is the equivalency of a page. So it's like there could be an age gap, actually. It could be an older woman and a younger man, but if not, just know that there's some kind of like I say, a disparity being represented between your value systems, between where you're currently at, and this may be part of the frustration, particularly if you have known this person a long time with the 6. It's like, okay, you've had as much experience of this connection as I have. Why is it that movement is so slow? The agent of Zen should be the most fast-moving agent, and in reality, that is not what we're seeing through the reading, right? I always get this song coming up for me whenever I think of The Expanse, and we talked earlier about Miller and the protomolecule, but the phrase I was hearing while I was boiling a kettle to sort of keep warm in this break when my phone charged was the Glenn Campbell song Wichita Lineman, and the line, "I hear you singing through the wires, I hear you calling through the wine," right? It's so evocative, I love it. And I always think of people sort of working on maintenance stuff in space with that song, partly because I sort of explored it because of James Gunn and Guardians of the Galaxy, but there's a real sense of somebody doing a difficult job, maybe like an overalls kind of a job, or at least feeling like a sort of lonely wanderer doing work that is possibly repetitive, and hearing somebody else through the wine, hearing the call of a particular figure, and that may be love related or it may not be, but you're sort of hearing them through the wine, or feeling a pull to something else. It's almost like the magician reversed in combination with that energy, and that phrase from that song is a little bit like pulling a judgment reversed, where you're hearing the call to a greater thing but not fully able to follow it. And I think that could apply to you, or if it resonates as somebody else close to you, it's important that you know that that is the energy. But also, like, remain fully charged. We can speak of all these wires, we can speak of hearing people through the wires in an older, more traditional Americana sense, or in this kind of futuristic cyberpunk sense. But either way, those wires need to have something moving through them. And so much of this is about being a conduit for something other than yourself, for a new energy coming in. If you identify with the love interpretation, these wires that we speak of are to do with electricity, to do with chemistry between you, and remembering that energy no matter what the disparity between you in terms of movement in the 3D. If you're instead identifying with the broader interpretation that I gave, the more sort of, well, not broader, but the more spiritual interpretation, the magician in reverse, I mean, the magician is an electrical conduit, right? He's earthing with one hand and receiving with the other. He is electricity. It always makes me think of like the David Lynch way of saying that, right? It's the, I think of the magician as being a little bit like, what's he called? Not the extension of the arm. What's he bloody called? I've got a tattoo of him and I can't even... I'll put it on the screen when I figure out what it is, but the evolution of the arm, that was it, where he's sort of saying electricity and stuff, or non-existent. Again, there's that fear of the void, right? Non-existent. I love that episode. But yeah, there's this sense of as above, so below is also an electrical statement in a way. It's like something is passing through the magician. They are acting as a priest in terms of being a conduit between the heavens and the earth, between the greater and the lesser, if you like. And hearing something moving through the wires, or having wire kind of imagery in that evocative way with the magician, tells me that the blockage here is in it's not in your capacity to receive and give that electricity. It's in something that you've put in place that is breaking the circuit. Does that make sense? And that may indeed be all these correspondences, because again, we're seeing so much in the way of alchemical and astrological stuff. It's like, get out of this needs to apply to this and get into just fucking feeling it and experiencing it. Anyway, the break taught us a lot, right? Maybe if you have a little break from all of this, it will teach you a lot. But I do think that you should maintain meditation with this Four of Arms. So now we've got a Six of Arms, which is interesting. We're speaking about moving forward, moving on, in a very intellectual sense. So for those of you where this is a love thing, it's like move forward with your life. That's not to say let go of this person, but it is to say you need to keep your intellectual focus on something other than this relationship, because it is dragging down aspects of your life that are not to do with it. I would highly suspect from the cards you have that these are financial aspects, right? It's affecting your ability to work, or its effect on your self-worth is perhaps the reason you're undercharging for your services, if that's applicable. But there's certainly like a sense of distraction, or a need to move away from it in order to come back round to it as well, because this is a very like, I'm seeing that the place that they're travelling to in this particular Six is like a tower of, again, it's got loads of wires coming from it and to it, but it's like it's almost like the journey will always return back to it because it's a central port. And the feeling with it is that Ithaca feeling of like, the journey was the return to the place from whence you came. The whole importance of the journey was to come back to the same thing but understand it in a completely different fashion. And those of you who it is a spirituality reading, you'll see instantly what I mean by that. You'll get it, right? Maybe you're coming back to former paradigms that you had as a kid in a way where you've explored lots of other very different things, or you've done things in a far more experiential way rather than a methodical ceremonial way. But if it is a love reading, it's a sense of get away from this relationship in terms of your mental space so that you can return to it with fresh eyes, right? And this is clarified by the Agent of Arms, so the Knight of Swords. Somebody rushing in. The indication indeed is that if you escape just dwelling on this for long enough, that will be the thing actually to help your person of interest charge forward, or in this case ride forward on a bike. I'm also seeing like the tornado, and I'm hearing there's like smoke coming from the front of the bike, which looks like a tornado, should I say. And I'm hearing the from Wizard of Oz, where she's in the tornado in the house and the Wicked Witch is riding past the window and saying, I'll get you yet and your little dog too. Again, with the hag imagery, right? Hag's always a bad thing, I don't know. I do know. I very much do know, actually. But yeah, there's this... it's almost like you're feeling like a passenger at the moment in your little Dorothy house. Unbeknownst to you, you're about to land on somebody's sister, you know, but it's kind of... something is rushing towards you and you feel caught up in this kind of tornado. Again, with the werewolf thing, the whirlwind, right? You may feel overtaken by your different impulses. But the message is that as long as you're able to intellectually remove yourself and gain space, you will come back to this with fresh eyes. And for some of you where this is spiritual, this is literally in terms of you've come out of the idea long enough to listen to me as a reader and to have a think about it in a not a more straightforward sense, but in a different sense. And therefore you can return to practice in a slightly different way, which will mean that you're rushing forward on your Akira-style bike through your cyberpunk city, as we all should be doing, right? As we would be doing in the best possible outcome. The one that wanted to come out is the Three of Vials, thankfully in the upright. Friendships and group work are going to be important to this. So they may be important to the removal because it's landing right next to it, or it may be that you're just making new friends which push this forward in a different way. In a spiritual interpretation, this could be collaboration with entity or deity as well. I want to say servitor, but then they're not looking like reflections of the same person or like things that are sort of pushed out from you. I feel like these are very much like forces outside of you that want to weigh in. These two want to come out together, and then I think we're done with that. Yeah, if you were working with deity, entity, anything collaborative, anything contracty, and you were feeling like you hadn't got enough of a experiential bargaining point within the moment, or a feeling of direct communication as clear as you normally get it, because clarity is important with electricity and with wires, right, with the Wichita lineman. This is a sense that like this collaboration is going to happen. But Cups is very Neptunian, imaginative, intuitive. So again, it's like, it's only going to happen if you manage to surrender to the dream space a little bit, if you manage to just let yourself go, to lose this identity of the face, as we spoke about with the meditative stuff. You need to dissolve in order to reintegrate, I think. You need to... I'm now thinking of like... what's it called? Is it Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the old version anyway, the 60s version, the film adaptation, where Mike TV dissolves into little pixels in order to reintegrate in a different setting, to kind of teleport, and they kind of can't get him to come back together again. And he's just lost. It just becomes this disembodied voice, like trapped in the television forever in this incredibly frightening way for a child. But it's... I feel like this is almost your fear, right? It's if you go into this hard enough, if you go into trance, if you surrender to a work of a more shamanic nature, and I don't mean that appropriatively, but just, you know, methodically shamanic, if you like. I think your fear is that you will dissolve into nothing. I think deep down, you think that you like this idea of unification with everything, but if you let go too much, if you surrender too much, you will just dissolve and become meaningless information in a sea of same. And I don't think that that's the case. This may even be why you were subconsciously drawn to the cyberpunk deck, right? Because it's all about informational excesses, how we manage incoming information, how we navigate the sea of pixels coming to us in a dystopian future. And for you, that is particularly relevant because it's like, what happens when I'm just another bit of data on a screen? How do I function? But the answer, I think, is you're not going to know until you get there, so try it. And also with this being such a dystopian thing, it's like the deck itself is not necessarily dystopian, but the genre is. So it's almost like, forget what you've been told about this becoming data or surrendering to data or surrendering to AI in some cases, or whatever it is. Oh, download. Some of you are... download. Lol. Some of you are integrating stuff to do with AI generated content into your magical practice. If that's you, hit me up, right? This is cool. I want to hear about it in the comments. I do weird things with audio sigils and sort of reversing stuff, and sometimes to do with AI generation around poetry and then working from that. But I'd love to hear what everyone else is doing with this new world we find ourselves in from a magical perspective. But anyway, the point is, you're not going to Mike TV this shit, but you need to surrender to it. And I think your frames of reference for it are a little bit outmoded. I want to say they're a beautifully old-fashioned way of seeing this kind of dispersing into the ether. I don't think that unifying with Godhead leads to a loss. Because I think that Godhead is already in a mode of unification anyway. I think you can only reflect aspects of a whole, and you as a consciousness, man, this is getting deep in this one. You as a consciousness, you are a particular assortment of facets of an overall reality, and surrendering to the overall reality does not mean that you're going to lose your facets. It just means that you're going to broaden your scope. If you came for a love reading or a shag reading, I just get that taking yourself away from the situation might involve hanging around with your friends, particularly female friends, because these are three women having a drink and laying on a bed and sort of talking about their weems, drishes and hopes, I was going to say. I'm just talking about my weems. You know what I mean? Just hang out with your friends is what I'm getting, and take your mind off this. And the extent to which you remove yourself from it just a little bit, even intellectually, if you can't bear to cut from contact from this person for long, it's going to help spur this on. It's going to help clarify it. In some cases, it's going to speed up this person who is very much lagging behind. Final two cards, we have a, ooh, excellent. We have an Emperor in reverse, and we have a Supervisor of Vials, so the Queen of Cups traditionally. Interesting that we're getting an Emperor and a Queen when before we had a Queen and a Page, right? Emperor reversed is an interesting one because it's about the loss of control. It's about giving over control. It can be about totalitarian powers. It can be about the dominant narrative of obedience and surrender. So if you were in, for example, a dogmatic religious background, and that's something that's becoming hard to shake, this is an indication that yes, that is up for examination, but only after you do this kind of more ephemeral work. It can also be an indication that you are freeing yourself from those paradigms, but it's also a subversion of the idea of power. The Emperor in the upright is a tricky card for many people, and we are in the trick pile, right? It tends to be associated with like the abuse of power, with figures who don't necessarily, deserve the power that they have. Sorry, I'm just transferring a hot water bottle because it's very cold in my existing flat. Excuse you. Yeah, it can be about sort of seeing being powerful as a negative thing. And with you having the Magician in reverse as well, it's like, what's your relationship to being a magician, to being a witch? Do you see it as a potentially really negative thing if you do have power? If you identify with this Jekyll Hyde werewolf self, do you think actually that if you were to generate more spiritual power, if you were to recharge, like my phone, that you would be a dangerous figure? Is that something that you're needing to examine? Are you scared of the very thing that you're seeking? But in either case, I do think it's a positive thing to sort of end on, because it's like you're re-examining your relationship to that thing. You're realizing that not all power is, that power doesn't require a hierarchical infrastructure, right? And again, cyberpunk deck, so we're talking about infrastructures, we're talking about metaphors for political organisations, etc., maybe for corporatisation. You're examining your relationship to these things and differentiating your definition of power from what you see to be negative structures in place within your daily life, right? So you're going, power isn't just about billionaires, it's not just about totalitarian regimes, it's not just about authoritarian father figures, it's also about personal power, and that sometimes comes from almost surrendering the identity to the whole and sort of letting yourself become a bit more fluid, a bit more trickster, a bit of a trick. Right? I am getting to the love reading, just hold up. With the Queen of Vials, this is like the ultimate feminine, intuitive, receptive energy. This is the ability to become the witch figure, to completely tap into taking those next steps that we spoke about you being afraid of, in terms of just feeling it out, right? This whole reading for you, if it is a religious or spiritual reading, is about feeling out next steps and being afraid to trust your sense of instinct, because you either associate it with the kinds of power that could become dangerous if you're in a moody werewolf kind of a thing, or you associate it with devastating speeds and Mike TV style disillusion into a reality that you're not altogether sure you want to dissolve into yet. But with this very Neptunian representation here, I think you are ready. For some of you, runes may be relevant because this symbol on the vial looks a bit runic to me. So you may be in some kind of spiritual paradigm that involves runic work, sigillic practice that is quite a bit older than sigils, etc. Yeah, I think that sort of sums it up if you were here for a reading about what to do next with your trickster figures, what to do next with your spiritual practice. And we're ending with like a 9 of wires, which is very interesting. It just caught my eye there, and you see that figure is drawing what looks to me like it could be a kind of electrical version of It makes me think of like the seal of Metatron or something, but done in a very tech way. I know that it's not that symbol, but it makes me think of adjacent sacred geometry stuff. So there is a sense within which, like, if you've been mired in correspondences, going down the experiential route and down the more intuitive route will bring you back to the world of producing the correct correspondences anyway. If you don't look it up in a book and you instead learn how to do it through meeting deity, entity, meeting the self even, and just sort of going on dreamlike journeys and feeling your way through. I'm getting the stalker in the zone, in the movie Stalker, that kind of a thing, you know, going on magical derives, etc. I feel like you're going to come all the way back round to those correspondences meaning the same fucking things anyway, or you're going to bring back to the kind of watching, waiting, Coveney world with the understandings that you've gained being actually in line with stuff that you would have learnt by rote learning, but just in a much deeper way. Again, it's this Ithaca, it's coming back to the point of origin with a new understanding of where you set off. If it was a love thing, the Emperor reversed is like now what do I want to say about this? If you were concerned with issues about producing children, about legacy, things like that, the Emperor in reverse might be an indication that if this person represented a kind of fatherhood for you, either in terms of being that surrogate figure to you or becoming a father within your relationship, I'm not sure that they're up to snuff within that yet. We've had a page in a night representing them before, any gender, right? And again, the Emperor is any gender, but it's almost like if you were looking to have kids, creativity being a big theme with this person, I'm not sure that they're in their Emperor upright energy to be able to provide that. And I think that's part of the reason you've been encouraged by the Six of Swords to sort of take yourself intellectually away from this and really get to grips with your friends and with your own value system, etc., and see how much this has taken from you with the surgical card, and sort of reevaluate, like, what do you want? And that also speaks to the supervisor of vials, because she's somebody who is very caring, very nurturing, and also very deep in an understanding of things on a non-verbal level, right? She can feel out whether people are right for a particular thing. If you're not looking to reproduce, that wasn't in your view at all, and this was, you know, more in reference to money stuff with you, and it was still a love reading, but that was where that came up. Again, there is an imbalance, right? Because there's an emperor and a queen rather than an emperor and an empress. So it's like the outcome of this is going to be still that you're on slightly different levels. And also one of you is operating from fire and being a bit more sexual. One of you is coming from water and being a bit more emotionally expressive. One of you may use the L word, the other one may prefer the F word, right? And there's not any indication at the moment that that's going to change. I don't think that that's saying it never will. I think it's saying that you need to go away and come back to it with a fresh eye, with a fresh mind, and maybe take some of the concepts from the sort of spiritual version of this reading, there's that rabbit fluff, and sort of bring them back to a love interpretation and sort of go, right, am I being intuitive with this, or am I looking at what everybody else expects me to do? Am I truly losing my identity to this thing? And is that something I feel comfortable with? Do I believe in a broader idea of love, or do I believe in a very fixed idea of love? Is this a simulation of what it is that I would like in the future, or is it a concrete reality? Do I believe that my manifestations occur in a holographic universe, or do I believe that my simulations are just daydreams to help me cope with my existing reality that I'm living? Right? All of these are very important questions, because you've picked a very sort of dreamlike, almost escapist deck. So it's like, whatever this relationship is, no matter how long it's been going on, it's a form of getting away for you. And I guess my question would be, what are you trying to escape when you have these fantasies, when you project onto this person that they can be a good father, or they can be on your level, or whatever it is, or vice versa, you know, because you might be cross-watching in terms of that stuff. But it's like, what what is the dream versus what is the reality? What is the simulation versus the true city? So much of cyberpunk fiction is about the real underneath the illusion of the technical, and therefore I think it applies very well to divination and magic, because it's about the lifting of the veil from something. And in a love reading, that is very much saying, what's true about this? And can you step away and figure that out in order to either come back to it, or to realise that the dream is a little bigger than the reality at the moment, and we need to work on making the two match, or at least making them interact in a healthier way. So I hope that was helpful, trick pile. That was hefty. That involved a lot of new things, new energies, going back on things. It was indeed a trick on me that my phone almost died altogether and lost the first part of this reading, etc. But yeah, I hope it was useful. And I am going to take another quick break and come back with treats. In fact, I'm going to record a thing now. I realise that I haven't said this for either of the previous piles, so I'm recording it in pile 3 here and now, but I'm going to insert it in the other two, where I'm going to say, if you would like to book a private reading with me, my shop is on hold at the time of uploading this, but it will be running in January with some sales. Please do consider it, bookmark it, etc. If you'd like to donate to help support the channel, that is also something that you can do down below. But if this was in any way useful to you, whichever pile you hail from, please hit like, please subscribe, please share with a friend that you think would enjoy these randomised mystery colour readings. And I hope to see you soon. Take care. Right, treat. Trick was a whole ass journey. I'm drawn to say as well that because so much of trick, as well as being fucking tricky to deliver, for one reason or another, because it was so sort of concerned with the differences between experiential knowledge and the knowledge of correspondence directly, you may be drawn to that purely because this deck, I mean, yes, it's traditional tarot, but it's also kind of functional as an oracle deck because, as said in the beginning, it's like these Rorschach type images, and I can't shuffle. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if this video goes out later than I planned, and I'm saying that almost as like a predictive thing because the trick pile was full of tricks on me and on the viewer, right? There we go. We're back to the normal vibe. We have cleansed, I hasten to add, in between the two. Right, let's get into the energy of tree. It's so much nicer, I can feel it already. Not to say that trick wasn't, but yeah, if you felt drawn to both, by all means watch that one as well, particularly if you wanted a love or a spirituality reading. It may be very useful to you. Treat. Let's do another one of these. It is a treat. I can feel it already. It's like, I don't know, it's like, I've got this like, candy floss feeling. That's all I can describe it as. It's like I have a sweet taste in my mouth, but there's also this like light and fluffy and cutesy kind of energy that I don't know whether you can tell, but I have a more heavy dwarfish kind of a vibe, generally speaking. But it's nice. It's very luminous. It's like, I feel like your vibe might be like light coming through clouds, you know what I mean? Like, but in a very colourful kind of a way. I don't know. It's just cute. I like it a lot. This guy wants to pop out. So we've got a 3 of Wands in reverse. And we've got a 7 of Cups in reverse. We're going to get 2 more and then we'll start chatting about what this is. Ooh. Excuse me. I left a review for this deck saying it was very chatty, like the second I opened it. It's more than true now. Right, so strength. And, excuse me. No, I just want 1, thank you. 9 of Swords. Okay, so let me just gather all of these little outliers. It's a very to advertise the deck further, I feel like there's lots of little, it's a bit like working with, for those of you who watched my reading where one of the piles was like Labyrinth and Dark Crystal playing cards, it's like that sort of fey energy. It's like all these sneaky, goblin-y little like giggly things sort of floating around. That again, that could be your energy because of this cloud imagery that I'm getting, but like it's just a really nice deck. It like feels like it has its own community that come along with it. That's the next one, but we're not going to look at it now. We're not going to worry about it now. We're just going to talk about these properly. Get your head in the game, Double L. Right. Okay. One moment. I feel like your treat is that you're able to breathe out now. This may be a literal thing for some of you who've had health problems, but I'm going to tell you the thought process I got to this, right? So we've had Three of Wands in conjunction with Seven of Cups. This is somebody sort of planning for expansion, planning for future activity, potentially travel, but certainly sort of having adventures of some kind, but has been overwhelmed by the amount of choice involved. This can be multiple romantic options, but with it being in reverse, it's almost like there's so much that you don't want to think about the choice. And similarly with the Three energy in reverse, it's like, I don't want to think about planning this. I don't want to think about what my options are. I don't want to think about going forward, even though going forward would be the treat. It would be, I want to say that the opportunities available to you have almost been a burden for a little while. It's like there's too much that you could be doing. And the sort of Rorschach quality, in this one I'm seeing a guy, a guy in a backpack, but it's like all of his belongings are in this backpack and it's really heavy, and he's kind of trying to set off down multiple roads. But also his backpack to me looks like a costume. It looks like he's cosplaying, like he's in... The backpack itself becomes like... I'm going to show you in case you can see it. But it's like the backpack is becoming this like alien cosplay or a dragon outfit or something that may resonate for some of you. If you're big into Comic Con, etc. You may have built stuff that you wear, right? But it's this... it's almost like a Gundam energy of like he's wearing this mecha of possibilities and choices around himself, and he doesn't know sort of where to move next, so he just stands in place. And it's almost like the wearing of the backpack, the costume, is performative enough that it makes everybody else around him feel like, oh, he's living his best life, he's made his decision. When I say he, it's any gender, right? This could apply to you if you're female identifying, but it's sort of... It's like you've demonstratively made your choice in terms of what other people are seeing you to do. Or you've said, I'm going to have adventures. And that's been enough for everyone else to be like, ooh. But in reality, you don't know where to go next with it, or you don't know what to pursue first. And it's been very laborious, very heavy on your back. I'm getting shoulder pain as I'm dealing with this. Again, you may associate with Power 1 because there was some shoulder comfort energy coming in with one of the cards that we got there. And at the moment, I'm feeling like I've been wearing a really heavy backpack for like a full day, which I haven't. And it's almost like getting my shoulder blades in order, you know? It's really... yeah, so there was this plan to go off and do stuff. And there may even have been... Like, it feels like you won the lotto, or you got an opportunity you never thought you'd get. You got the job that you thought was like 1,000,000 in one chance of you getting. Whatever it is, and there's like a hooray, there's a figure here going hooray, but it's in reverse. So it's like, oh shit, what now? And the thing that's coming in for you is a sense of peace about this whole thing, because it's strength and it's Nine of Swords, but it's kind of the Nine of Swords energy with these blobs sort of... it's going like blob, 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 and then it's accumulating and forming a big cloud, and then it's going into this like release valve at the top. It's like going... And I feel like that's somebody breathing out. It's somebody exhaling, like it's been churning, it's been building, it's been sort of getting bigger as it goes, moving in different directions, and then it's just going to go... Oh, wait, I know what I'm doing. And strength is, in this particular deck, it's somebody dipping, it's actually a woman in this, dipping her toe into the water in a very tentative kind of a way of like, should I? But it's almost as if this thing of the act of dipping your toe in one particular set of waters is enough that all of this pressure that's been building, all of these different ideas about where you should go next, and indeed the responsibility of success, because the people around you have been envious of said successes, or they've been sort of going, excellent, now what you're going to do with it, in that bit of a shadowy way. It's like all of that churning up, all of that generating so much emotion and responsibility within you is going to have an escape route, and it's just going to go, boom. And that's why I'm getting this light-hearted, like in the clouds, like I'm hearing the beginning of the theme from the Never-Ending Story, like when Bastian's on Falco, and it's all like, because it's like that. It's like you've been in this big churny, difficult thing, and you've been under the weight of all of the decision of what to do with it, because sometimes the things that we want also are a burden, right? And now it's like just the act of trying one thing in secret, just a bit, has kind of made you go, oh, it's all okay. Fine. Like unraveling everywhere, like, woo, that was difficult, right? Five of Swords, interesting. I'm hearing Army Ants by Tom Waits. That might be relevant to some, but this looks to me like some kind of, again with the mecha energy, but it's like an extremely armoured beetle or something. Okay, what next? Five of Swords clarified by what? So nifty, this deck, so swift. Clarified by the King of Pentacles, that's interesting. Okay. So again, it speaks to this idea that your successes were not necessarily well received. I think this may have been a bit of a backbitey thing. I don't think anybody in your life would have been the type to be like, excuse me. I don't think anybody would have been the type to be like, oh, well, I'm directly jealous of this fucking thing that you've got, and why should you have it instead of me? Check out M is for Malefica if that feels on it, but I don't think it was that direct. I think you may have got a bit of a passive-aggressive energy from some of the people in your world when you sort of spoke about new opportunities that you had, and they were sort of a bit like, oh, great for you, you know, or like just like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy for you, and then waiting for you to trip, you know, that kind of, it's that very Instagram vibe. This is why I'm not like on Instagram, although that may change because many of you are and many of you are interesting. So I'm thinking about it. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to join. But yeah, it's this like, I'm so happy for you right before people kind of publish any failures that you have because they're pleased that you didn't see your successes through, or, you know, it's like, it's just that very shady energy of like somebody saying that they're looking out for you, but what they're actually doing is looking out, as in watching whether you have something that they don't have. And the King of Pentacles dealing with this is a much more grounded outlook. It's almost like there's a person that looks like that like up here. This to me looks like a dude going, above proceedings, like, what? And it's like you're listening in on these kinds of conversations, or you're picking up these slightly not so great vibes from the people cheering you on, and realizing where the connections in your life are good, where they're not so good, realizing that some of the people that you've confided in, particularly if this is like in your love life, some of the people that you've told about how excited you are for a certain thing actually have vested interest in you remaining where you are, whether that means that you're still fucking around with them, or that you're still single, or that you just don't have as pleasant a time as they would like to have first, right? I'm also, in the middle of this, I'm seeing a Mothman, right? I see them wherever I look, my dude. Everything is a cryptid with this motherfucker. But particularly with this, it's almost like there's this sense of, I always think of Mothmen like appearing in the road, reflecting car headlights back at the oncoming car. So it's like they're mirroring back to you something that it was that you needed to see as like, oh, I'm afraid of success because shady motherfuckers, or I didn't want to try this thing because I kind of knew on a subconscious level that I was going to get a lot of shit for it, a lot of backlash. Interpretation just for some of you, because these are all general readings. I should have said that at the beginning, but large audience, lots of different things will apply. But for a minority, you have led a bit of a... You've led a life where you're relatively giving with your sexuality, not demonizing that at all. Certainly I've had phases of the same. And I feel that you're coming to a point with a union or connection where it's very promising, and it's going to be a narrowing of that behaviour. Again, this 7 in reverse, a narrowing of options into a sort of very coherent trajectory. Perhaps you went from poly to not being, or you went from just dating around to like having involvement with a person that you're like, no, that's my person right there. And if you've not associated with people who see you as a commitment figure, or if you've had a lot of people around you who kind of stay around you in case they can get in on that at a later date, right? Friends that sort of linger with a bit of interest as well. I feel like they're seeing this in you, this stability, this King of Pentacles steadfastness, and they're not receiving the whole process well. But the reason I'm saying this Mothman is that it's reflecting back to you. And moths as well are about symmetry and about they're attracted to the light, but they're kind of pushed back with the wing, like I know what I mean, right? It's this like reflective energy, but it's also, you know, in the sudden illumination of things is when you see the moth, right? And it's very like big and like, I'm a moth. And it's like, there's a sudden moment for you with the guy going, of like, yeah, this is how these people feel. And that's why I was afraid. And it actually wasn't to do with me. It wasn't a reflection upon my stability. Again, king could be any gender. That I felt a little bit like I couldn't go forward. I felt armoured, you know, the armoured bug that I saw. I'm now seeing it as a lobster. And what's interesting with lobsters is that they're sort of like vaguely immortal, right? They just keep shedding bits of themselves instead of dying. I'm not entirely sure how that works. I'll link down below to someone explaining it better than I can. But I see lobsters as like both the ultimate sort of deep sea kaiju and as something that outlasts everything that it's defending against in a way, because it just makes new shit. It just makes new appendages and it just stays. And I feel like you've grown a whole new exoskeleton in recent, I want to say recent days, not even like years or weeks. And the people around you are finding you a little bit unrecognizable. But your strength is that you're finally breathing out and going, oh wait, I don't give a shit. Your treat is not that you received the initial treat, the initial money, the initial connection, the initial success in whatever form. It's that you're shedding these ideas from other people about what it is that entails for your future. And you're recognizing where you may have self-sabotaged in the past, not because you're a loser who self-sabotages, not because you're kind of easily tempted into other things necessarily, but because on a deep level, you understood that if you were to commit to a certain trajectory, there would be backlash from people who don't define you as being that thing or that kind of a person. This is similar to, I think it was pile 2 in my red orange, where someone was shedding like a circle who were no longer in alignment with their values. But it's not that your friends on the same page as you, it's that they have a very fixed definition of who you are. And I think you're about to fly in the face of that with something that really speaks to you and appeals to you. And in doing so, I think you're going to piss off their sense of which way is up, with so many of these being, you know, comprehensible in the reverse. It's like they don't know what's up or down. If you suddenly come to them and you're like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about a marriage, and you've always been in the nicest possible way a fuckboy, or in that energy, any gender, right? Or if you're, you know, you've been thinking about travel and it's been this place and then this place and then this place, and you suddenly go, oh, I'm going to try somewhere completely different that I've never even mentioned to anybody else. And their reaction is going to be, what? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to anybody except you. Again, with the echoes of pile 1. But that's exactly as it should be. It doesn't need to make sense to anybody except you, because it's not a gift for them. It's not their treat. 2 of Swords. I'm seeing this as a pair of peacocks. So if this is a romantic connection, you may both identify with being quite extrovert in your appearance, shall we say, or with having a certain level of sort of glamour style control over how other people perceive you. Maybe like colour work, stuff like that. 8 of Swords in reverse. So this again speaks to that sense of like being trapped by old ways of seeing, but I don't think they're your ways of seeing. I think they're the people around you kind of refusing to redefine you as anything else. And you're seeing the truth of the 8, which is that the person in the traditional deck is not trapped by the swords at all. They're just feeling that way because of the positioning of them, but there's a way to walk out of that sequence very easily. 2 of Swords is indecision as well. It's a choice between one thing or another thing. So I feel like you're seeing this today because you may still be straddling that fence, right? You may still have one toe in the new waters and one foot on land, but it's a land that you're very much ready to sail away from at this point. And I think that you're seeing that. What about the intuitive interpretation? With this 8, I'm seeing like a... Oh, that's really interesting. Wait a sec. Ooh. Hello. Okay, this is... I'm seeing a pelvis. I'm hearing the creaking of a ship. So some of you are like travelling on boats somewhere, or you're... If it's romantic, I think you're taking somebody on a boat trip. That's like, I'm getting, and it's not like, because I immediately think of Venice or something, but it's like a pirate ship kind of sound. I've been watching, as of today, I've been watching 1899, I think it's called, where they're on a steamship and there's all those lovely boat noises. And it's that kind of thing I'm hearing. And with it being the pelvis, this is like the bowl of, I'm going to sound like such a hippie. This is, the pelvic bowl is like the root of the identity, the self. It's kind of, in many forms of witchcraft, it's like where you ground into, where you settle yourself. There's also some kind of other traditions where when you're meditating, you track your awareness, you kind of put it in your third eye, and then you gradually lower it down your body and sink it and sink it and sink it into that point sort of at reproductive level. And you put all of your body's awareness into there and take it away from the rest of the body. Again, this movement inward from the shape of the outward expansion, right? It's a very closed in kind of a shape. It's like coming into one thing. So again, with the echoes of pile 1 and meditation and sort of returning to self, grounding, but it's almost like you're pulling in all of the energies, particularly with it being that area, right, that is a bit sexy. If you identify with that interpretation, you're pulling in all the energies, all the contracts, all the soul ties of everybody that you were fucking. And you're saying, actually, that little thing was mine, and I'm cutting this thread, and I'm pulling this back into myself, and you are a wonderful person, but that's an aspect of myself that I'm returning to self now. You're essentially drawing back in all the power that you've given away by increments to other people in some sort of a way. And for many of you, that is sexual. And it's through allowing them different facets of your personality so that they can kind of feed off the abundance of sexual and identity energy that you have, especially with the peacock. But then it's like you're drawing it all back in because you're pulling back all the power that is displaced to anything except you in order to fully receive this gift and go forward, because there's like a forward movement with both of these cards. There's like a central pillar, right? A trajectory, if you will. I think the ship noises thing is just that if you are meditating at all, and that is something, if you identified with the exercise that I was just talking about, I think it'd be good for you to listen to like I know from experience that they are out there, but like creaky ship noises, particularly if you need to meditate with some sound on, rather than music. I think one of these kind of sleep sound things where you're on a ship is going to speak to you or your ancestry or something like that, or it's going to be evocative of travel and of expansion. And I think you're in a Sagittarian energy where you need that at the moment. Ten of Pentacles reversed. So something about what you owed to others or about what they considered to be your legacy is being redefined, right? You're no longer under everybody else's definition of who it is that you are. And then the Two of Cups in the upright, yeah, for many of you this is a connection, right? This is supplanting the old idea. And you can see that they're very different shapes, right? They have the same kind of echo feeling, but they're made up in a different way. So this is very much speaking to this thing that, like, your self-definition in the past has been very much about what other people expect of you. And the reason you're seeing this in an orange reading, as we were talking about in the beginning, and the kind of renunciation of former self, the redemption of renunciation, the expectations of others, the bashing of opposite paradigms, and coming to a middle meeting which pisses everyone off equally. These are all themes that are coming out through this. But with the Two of Cups being here, this is very much tied to a connection, or tied to, I want to say, like a best friendship. If it's not romantic, I think there's something about somebody very, very close to you in a literal way that has brought this about, that has made ripples, because I'm seeing another figure here. It's like there's a person here and they're creating ripples in the water coming out from them, which is very cupsy anyway. And then this thing here is almost like the exoskeleton of the baggage, but it's also making me think of the Mondo Showan in The Fifth Element, the kind of translates as guardian, so they're the guardian figures, the angels, really, if we're being real, right? It's Besson's equivalent of archangels / aliens. So there's a sense of being protected, and of whatever this connection is, being, in some cases, divinely guided or divinely protected, and it's sending ripples out into all areas of your life, because you're bashing through the definitions of what other people wanted you to be, or I want to say wanted you to want, and that's your treat, right? You're defining for yourself what it is that you actually were going to go after. And I feel as well that this is like, I'm seeing like it's like a bull mask. So Taurian things may factor very heavily, or you might have a Taurian moon, or be dealing with very Taurian, very earthbound, stubborn kind of characters. But with it being like a bull mask, what I'm thinking about is the people around you defining what it is that's quote unquote good for you, actually with the presence of a mask, may be more about what's good for them, what's fortuitous for them. So if you've come from a family that discouraged you to be in a romantic connection, it may actually be more to do with the fact that they could kind of keep you in a certain position themselves, be that financially or emotionally. If you're coming from a friendship group that, like I say, had interest in you on a more than friendship level, it could be that their discouragement of you pursuing commitment was more to do with, like, please keep me around, I need to stay relevant. Or if it's nothing to do with those kind of areas, and it's just that a friendship has put you out of yourself and made you realise you want to go after this job, or this, way of making money, or this travel thing, or whatever, there's certainly an indication that at the root level, at the sort of Pentacles is about familial stuff, so I'm getting at your background, your family, whether it's chosen or blood related or whatever, but your sort of point of origin figures have been guiding you towards something that actually benefits them a lot more than you. And I'm not saying that that was intentional on their part, or that anyone's deliberately misled anyone. I just think that people will tell you what is true for them, and that sometimes they won't acknowledge their own fears or their own reasons for those things being the case, right? A good example is like an overprotective mother who puts you down a certain path because actually they'd prefer you to stay at home because they feel unsafe without you being around them, right? But it's actually like it would be beneficial for the whole family unit for you to step into your expansion. That kind of a thing. It doesn't have to be that scenario, but this is the sort of thing I'm channeling. So 9 of Wands in reverse, with the Page of Swords in reverse. Interesting. You've stopped being an observer of your own life. The Page of Swords in reverse, you've stopped kind of... I think some of the way that other people defined you in the past has put you in a position where you're like watching your own movements with interest from a place of distance. It's given me like a dissociation vibe. And it's not necessarily dissociation from trauma either. It's just like you've gotten into the habit of floating above yourself, watching everything that's happening. And when I talk about these decisions before that were potentially self-sabotaging, it's like, it's almost like you weren't in them when you made them. You were just kind of watching yourself, and then later you go, for fuck's sake! I think we've all had that experience to one extent or another, but 9 of Wands is about feeling wounded by something. And with it in reverse, it's a healing of that wound. And I think really you're healing the fact that in the past you may have fucked up. I think it was difficult for you to accept whatever this kind of boon is, right? This gift from the universe, be it money, be it travel, be it companionship with a specific person. It was difficult for you to take it on because you were very much in the mindset of, but I've fucked up so many things, or I've like self-sabotaged on so many levels before that I feel uncomfortable with taking on something that's just so nice. It's just wholesome, it's just good, right? It's uncomplicated in its wonderfulness. It's got that light, expansive, light through the clouds energy that I was speaking about earlier, right? It's almost like you didn't want to receive something so lovely, and part of your vacillation between different options of what to do with it was because it's like, this is too much of a responsibility, this is really good and pure, and if I fuck it up, I've really fucked it up, right? I fucked me up if I betray this. So for some of you, it's a very wholesome person. For many of you, it's just that the opportunity is something that you've had lesser versions of before, or similar versions of before, and you've maybe made decisions around those things that you felt separate from and then really regretted those decisions later on. Like I say, you've been dissociated in the moment and you've gone, oh, I'm going to do this thing that fucks this thing up. And then you've come back as the observing Page of Swords later and gone, no, what are you doing? What were you doing? Fuck. But I think this time is going to be different. And you've got, in one of these I'm seeing a manta ray, which is my symbol for like all is well. It's always been that way since I was a kid. I used to love Benchley and the Girl of the Sea of Cortez, and then sort of in adulthood, I got that confirmed with some really nice stuff happening to me around the time that Moana came out, and that being a manta ray thing. But manta ray smiling at me in this, I don't know whether you can sort of see him. But it's just like, no, this is cool now. And the same energy that was positive in your childhood and in your childhood memories is present here again to tell you that this is okay, it's going to be fine. With the 9 of Wands as well, I'm seeing like a little imp figure with horns. So again, it's this thing of like the people around you guiding you. It's sort of been a devil on your shoulder, really, whether or not they intended for it to be that way, because they were preventing you from stepping into your bravest and best self, or indeed reaping the rewards of your efforts. I feel like you've worked a lot on your own life and on yourself as well, and you've not really had a chance to enjoy it because you've been too worried about whether the ways of enjoying it would piss off the people closest to you or hurt them. There's a sense of, there's all these mechas and guardians and archangels and all that sort of stuff. And yes, I'm into that. But the bigger thing of that is that, like, you want to protect those around you, almost from yourself in a way. And I think that has been a reason that you've stopped yourself from enjoying the treats that come in. Ace of Wands in reverse. And the Emperor in reverse. Again, same as Power 1, you might have, you might be in the process of examining your relationship to power and how it is that you define power, and whether you see it as always an imbalanced thing or an unhealthy thing to have. I actually feel that you'd be put in a position of power from pursuing whatever this is, you know, travel, relationship, whatever, many interpretations, general reading. But it's like you feel the weight of responsibility with that, I want to say. I think you are an emperor figure, any gender, but it's like I get this thing of like the oppressed king. And I know kings aren't easily oppressed, but it's almost like the king sort of reclining in his throne, burdened by the weight of the kingdom, right? It's, yes, everybody adores you. Yes, everybody looks to you. Yes, everybody has their 2 cents on what it is that you should be doing next. And you're very relied upon, but it's prevented you from movement forward, and certainly from enjoying your own life, because you get to have one as well. It's not just about the kingdom. Ace of Wands in reverse speaks to that as well. It's a blockage in creativity, or sometimes in sexual energy as well. It's like the impulsivity of what it is that you would sexually, spiritually, or creatively go for is hindered by what the consequences of it will be even before it happens. And again, I'm not saying that because that's the outcome or anything. I'm saying it because your treat is a new way of defining your approach to receiving good things, receiving pleasure, dipping your toes in new waters, acting on impulses that you may have had for years and years. This wants to come out as well. And then we're done with that one. So we've got the Lovers in reverse. Again, the echo of the Emperor energy, and that there's lots of spotting with this particular bit of blood. There's lots of splatter pattern, there's lots of good droplets, but I think that speaks to you feeling very scattered, very dispersed where it comes to love relationships, unification, relating to this 2 of Cups. That's why it's flipped, right? It's this like, you've got your fingers in too many pies almost to know how you feel about a thing, and it's almost like you're wanting to call in all of these droplets. I'm seeing the bit in Blade where Stephen Dorff turns into a blood god. And there's all the like little droplets of blood everywhere kind of seeping in together and forming this one entity. But it's like the positive version of that. It's like all of your thoughts that belonged to different people and had all of your bits of energies that were in other things are finally coming together. And actually what they're forming is this relationship or partnership or friendship or understanding, right? But I think for the vast majority it is a relationship to another person. And then we've got the Ace of Pentacles and the Fool, both reversed. So there's again, Power 1 echoes. I really do feel it might help you to watch Power 1 as well. This is going to affect your financial situation, but not in a negative way. It's going to be like a new financial start, but I think you're a bit nervous of that. For some of you, you're changing location or changing career or something like that based on this awareness that you've suddenly gained. And with the Fool in reverse, you're doing a risk assessment of this whole situation. You're thinking about how practical it is to really go forward with this stuff that intuitively you do want to dip yourself into. And I'm here to say that it's your treat, so fucking have it, right? You don't go around trick-or-treating, collecting all this Halloween candy in order to leave it in a bucket in the corner and never eat it and go, that was a job well done, right? You come home and you scoff that shit and you're climbing up the walls all night and it's crazy, right? It's, you know, that's the part of the fun of Halloween, at least when you're a kid. There's also a like moth symbol going on here. Bit Silence of the Lambs with the blood imagery as well, so that might be a confirmation thing. But I feel like, again, with the moths, but it's like a transformational energy. This one is more butterfly-ish as well. It looks like a, is it an emperor butterfly? Or a monarch or something like that? Again, with the emperor reversed. But anyway, it's this feeling of like it's not even like you've been in your cocoon. It's just like you're emerging now as yourself. And other people thought that you already had, and they figured that your version of self completely fit in with what they wanted from you, and you're kind of going, psych, that's not who I was at all. I'm going to do this now because I have the opportunity to, I have the money to, I have the creative collaboration, I have the partnership to do these things. I have a sense of expansiveness and possibility within my life that I didn't have at any point prior to the moment that you're viewing this. And therefore, I'm going to use those resources to have a fucking good time for the first time in what I feel is a long time. You know, you may have had moments of happiness, or you may have had some fulfilling relationships, etc. But I think it's either not lasted long, or it's not been sufficient that you've been able to behave like yourself. You've always still been a version of yourself that other people want to see. And your treat, my dude, is that you no longer have to be. You can just be you, and you can just enjoy it. And really enjoy it. And you can, again, pile one, you can sort of step into it on an instinctive level and go, what do I fancy doing today? What do I want to say? What do I want to do? If there was no weight upon me, if there was no risk to this risk, if I knew that I would never be dissuaded or rejected in any fashion, what would be my next move? And you're going to do that. And it's going to be rad. It's going to be wicked. I'm sort of jealous, honestly. I hope that this is kind of my pile, but yeah, it's beautiful. You're coming to the full reversed in the end, because actually you're turning it upright. The full reversed is where all these mask wearers have wanted you to be. And I think you're actually just flipping it and becoming this sacred trickster, which is white orange. And going, you know what, I may not know what's coming up in the next moment, but I know what my next move is going to be, and it's going to fly in the face of everything prior. And I don't even care anymore. It's not that you're okay with upsetting people, it's just that you kind of know that the right people will still be there. And you're free. This whole reading is about your freedom. What a treat. Right, that concludes treat pile. Wicked. That was a much easier energy to tap into as well. Oh, she says, dropping all the cards on her lap. Fantastic. In fact, I'm going to record a thing now. I realise that I haven't said this for either of the previous piles, so I'm recording it in pile 3 here and now, but I'm going to insert it in the other two, where I'm going to say, if you would like to book a private reading with me, my shop is on hold at the time of uploading this, but it will be running in January with some sales. Please do consider it, bookmark it, etc. If you'd like to donate to help support the channel, that is also something that you can do down below. But if this was in any way useful to you, whichever pile you hail from, please hit like, please subscribe, please share with a friend that you think would enjoy these randomised mystery colour readings. And I hope to see with you soon. See with you soon. Take care. All right, creativity. The beautiful, wonderful DC Comics Sandman artist Dave McKean deck. Let's tap into some creative artistic energy, shall we? Or indeed some fuck energy if you're trying to create a family. We shall see. Bit of both, I suspect. Creativity. What do you want them to know, fam? Come at me. Sorry, I'm getting insulted by what I work with, thanks. No, I'm not going to share, because you think you're clever and you're not. Anyway. If I appear mad, it's only because madness is a function of what I do. Don't be alarmed. I will still give you an appropriate reading. And you don't have to condone me as a person. You just have to enjoy it, right? Again, with the echoes of pile 2. You don't have to condone this. You just have to watch me. Is it this one? Yeah. And that. Okay. Right, we'll start with them. And this, because he fell. Right, we have a 4 of Swords with 7 of Swords. Oh, my back still hurts from pile 2. That's a lot they were carrying, man. A Temperance in reverse. I'm going to actually reverse it. That's not the first time I've seen tits in the imagery today. Knight of Cups. Sorry, the last pile was like a Rorschach test and I kept seeing boobs, but I didn't say it. I should have said it. If you're watching and you were there in pile 2, now I'm saying it. I saw tits everywhere, but I thought it was just my brain. Yeah, Knight of Cups, sorry. Was it in reverse? Were you in reverse? Yeah, Knight of Cups was in reverse. Sorry, I'm getting off track. It's all that thought about boobage. And the Knight of Pentacles in reverse. She says, almost as a question. I promise you I am a professional. It's just been a very fucking long day. Okay. Creativity. Come at me. All right, there's a balancing of different mediums going on. Perhaps combining one thing that you're very good at with another thing that you're very good at, and trying to sort of blend them into one thing for the first time. It's left you feeling very tired, depleted. You're seeing things in a different way, or this is a visual medium that's involved. More on that 7, please. Sorry. Okay, we've got a 10 of cups. I'm not taking that second one. You can stuff it. You were calling me names earlier. 10 of cups. This 7 also is in relation to I want to say like a personal betrayal from somebody you really care about. I'm not announcing that if you didn't already know it was the case. I don't do that in my readings. This is just like reflecting it for those who need that confirmation. But something potentially within your love life or within your close relationships, your family, is affecting your creative life. And I want to say that it was something that was like a bit sneaky. For some of you, you have a child that has accidentally or on purpose destroyed part of your work, because I'm seeing like a baby in the background of this. This could be that you've had a child recently and that's reduced your capacity to be creative because you're obviously tired all the time, and the 4 of Swords is a very sleepless card. But I'm also seeing this kid, and I'm thinking of a particular time in my own life where children were permitted to play around something that I was working on creatively and ended up just trashing it, just absolutely destroying literally years of work at that point. It was fine. It was all meant to be. It's all rad, you know, and I didn't shout at them, and I'm very proud of myself. But it's that kind of a scenario is coming in of like somebody coming in and perhaps spilling tea all over the papers or deleting the file or just distracting you to the extent that there's something fucked up about this if it is like an artistic endeavour. I would say, like, I'm not positioning this as a warning because I don't like doing warnings, diagnostics. I think they're a bit of a curse, you know, like saying, oh, a bad thing will imminently happen is very sort of prescriptive and can mean that something does. But what I will say is that if you're viewing this reading on a day where you were going to bring children to a studio space or, you know, like a recording studio or an art space or to your writing room or whatever it is that is your place of work in that sense, maybe don't have them in that area because accidents happen. If that doesn't resonate at all and there's no children involved in your life at all, like I say, this is something to do with your family, your close connections, something like that, that is affecting your ability to work, making you kind of tired. It may be the thing that spurred on the mixed medium perspective that you're having with the temperance coming in, but it's also something that's been a bit of a distraction for you. This face in front of the child on the 7 is very like displaced, distracted, all over the place. It's not somebody who's in their correct creative mindset. And the Knight of Pentacles in reverse with the Knight of Cups in reverse, these both speak to that momentum being broken, to something that should be speedy being slowed down, particularly with the Pentacles. Your work may be a factor as well, like if you have a creative hobby and then mundane work or another way of making money in an adjacent field or whatever. It's like your need for putting a roof over your head, etc., is... It's breaking up the time that you have available to work on this right now. And it's also stopping you from being quite as imaginative with the Knight of Cups being in reverse. Again, general reading, so I'm reading for a large group and some things will apply to some won't, so take what resonates. But for some of you, there is a creative endeavour that you were in the middle of that was like a romantic offering to somebody, you know, like writing someone a song, drawing them a comic, something along those kinds of lines. And a betrayal from that person has interrupted the process and indeed interrupted your ability to be imaginative or romantic, which is a very Knight of Cups thing. So if you started to write an album where you had a particular muse, say, Just a very broad example, it won't apply to everyone, but something like that. And then this person perhaps didn't treat you too well, or did something unexpected, pulled away or something like that. It's like you feel that that has impacted your ability to be creative at all, or to return to that medium. And that may be why you're mixing mediums, or why you're sort of focusing your energies on something else creatively that you're good at this time. For the people who are coming to me for a reading about trying for a baby, I don't think this is it, but with the 10 and the 7 together, I think like there's some kind of interruption to the process that is to do with somebody being sneaky, or something socially going on that's upsetting, or something like that. So I'm gonna, for those who came specifically for that, I'm gonna say leave it here, and that's your sort of reading on that, and come back to the process when that stuff has passed, and when neither of you feel niggled by those circumstances, right? Because I think for most this is like an art specific kind of a reading, but I do want to be able to speak to everybody that I sort of addressed in the intro, right? All right, so more on this. How do we break this interruption, return to full creative capacity, etc.? What kinds of things can we be doing with ourselves? Thank you. Oh, nice. It always leaps out, doesn't it? The speeder, the 8 of Wands, right? And in this case, it's paintbrushes. So the visual arts, again, may be very influential, as may colour work. Hermit reversed. This is the Hermit. This is him reversed. I always forget which comics figure it is on that. I must learn or relearn this deck, right? Because I always remember the stuff that pertains to the comics I've actually read, and then I forget the other shit. But there's a division in self clearly indicated by this, the 2 hands being in different colours, right? But I feel like you're swiftly coming out of this energy. I think that's why, even before we turned over the Hermits, returning to social circumstance, and indeed to the art world or the music world or whatever world you move through, the 8 of Wands wanted to leap out and say, hey, it's okay, this is going to shift, this is going to be fine. There's a quick process of communication, messaging, creation, in a very literal form. You may get an idea in the middle of the night, or you may just have an experience of a flow state over a day that sort of changes the trajectory that you're currently on to be a lot faster. Excuse me, hiccuping, channeling. All right. Did you hear my stomach then? I promise you I'm not hungry. Maybe you are. Hungry for better ideas. Hungry for more content. Hungry for more creation. Excellent news. I should pick out 4 apparently before I continue with this. So these are all related then. They're being smart Alex with me. You may be surrounded by some kind of influence that is being smart with you. For those who identify with children interfering with your creative process, I get the feeling that they can be free with their words or sort of answering back a bit. Right, so we've got a 10 of Pentacles in reverse. Going to reserve judgment until we've seen the other cards. I'm starting to shake as well. You really need to eat if you are hungry, because that is not me. A death. Don't panic. A Page of Cups reversed. Again, the imagination is what's been blocked here, or the sort of romantic capacity. And then with the last 2, sorry, bunny fluff, we've got the Tower reversed and the 5 of Cups reversed. That's good. This is very similar to my red pile 1, but I promise you I've shuffled the deck a million times since then, so that might be relevant. All right. Okay, so this creative pursuit in some way informs your income, or like I say, you've got a conflicting income resource that is not going so well at the moment, so you've turned your attention towards survival, basically. With the Death card coming up, it's like this, something needs to end, something needs to be cut off or finished with before you can progress. And it does pertain to this, some kind of event that made you lose your imaginative capacity or made you think about things in a different way. With the Five of Cups reversed, you've been focusing on what it is that you lost from a situation rather than what it is that you had to gain or you stood to gain, particularly if you resonate with the narrative of something being destroyed that you created, or if indeed you resonated with this being like a romantic offering to somebody and you destroyed it because you were so fucked off with the way that that person treated you. And I'm so sorry if that's you. I've been through similar a long time ago, but yeah. Try not to burn your paintings from personal experience. Try not to delete your MP3s, all that kind of stuff, right? Because there will be some point in the future which you look back on that period and go, the creativity that I had there was actually more important than how I felt in relationship to that person who wasn't so nice, wasn't so kind, if they were nice, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, with the Five of Cups, the focus on what it is that you lost is about to shift into realising what your assets actually are. So if you do identify with something having been destroyed because of a time period that wasn't so ideal, I think you're going to start to see the value in what it is that you made and do it in a new way, rather than letting go of the whole process altogether, or like coming away from art or whatever it is. We got the Hanged Man. That's interesting. This can be many things, but particularly in this deck, and particularly in the understanding given to me by what's emitted with the orange light, this is very Odin, right? It's very sacrificial. It's about giving up something in order to fully understand the situation and move past it, which again can be a temperance thing and certainly a Tower reverse thing. So if you didn't get the lesson as it was happening in the Tower reversed way, if you didn't see the wisdom of the crisis while you were in it, and it could have been a financial crisis because of these two, or like I say, could have been to do with some betrayal close to you, particularly in a romantic sphere. But whatever it was, again, general audience, there is a sense in which, like, you're now coming to terms with this as a concept of sacrifice. You sacrifice that project, you sacrifice that iteration of the thing that you made to the loss itself as like an offering to say, hey, have this. It's not my best work anyway, or it's not what I meant to do in the end anyway, but it's taught me how to start to do the thing that I'm going to do next. So for all of you, I'm saying that there is, in the project that was abandoned or destroyed or leaves a bad taste in your mouth now because of what it was about, or any of those kinds of themes, there is something to take forward into the next thing that you make, which you couldn't have learned had you not done that thing and either destroyed it or had it destroyed, right? And again, different interpretations because different people, but your last project, or the project that I'm referring to when we talk about this loss, this sacrifice, you know, the big thing, the big event, the big humdinger, something about the process of making, being, or doing that, or even imagining it, is like still a thread that you can carry into your later works, and maybe even will transform your later works for being that, right? You've got a new theme, or you've got a new technique. You've been forced into mixing two media which you didn't think mixed in a way that is going to be more interesting to your audience, even if your audience is you. For some of you, I'm getting that you're diarising a process, which, although the process was excruciating, the contents of that diary will be important for your next work when you're in a happier place. Yeah, there's something about the marriage of opposites brought about because you were like, oh, fuck this thing, right? That is your next thing, and it's going to come in very swiftly because the Eight of Wands being the central axis of your reading so far, the point in which everything is weighed up, right? I'm seeing the scales of Ma'at or Mart sort of going to one side to the other, and it's like you're making a decision about where to go next, but it's all hinging on like what it is that you learnt from this. Again, Emperor reversed has come up in every reading for orange. Wow. Mad, right? Absolutely wild. And then we've got a Ten of Swords in the upright. Okay, so the interpretation of the Emperor reversed is actually quite different from previous piles. I'm going to get another 3 cards, I'm just being told to. Maybe more of an outcome thing. Or more of an inspiration, insight thing. What do you mean? Okay, whatever. It's these three, right? There's 4 there. It's a clarifier, whatever. It's orange. I don't care. You take over. Regardless, the Emperor in this one, it's the puppet on a string, but flipped. So if you resonated with it being like a romantic connection, having far too much influence over your creative output, or you making something for somebody that then didn't treat you well, you have stopped being their puppet on a string. You have stopped having your creative self be influenced or even indoctrinated by whatever it is that they want from you. Pile 2 maybe of broad relevance there, because it's about breaking out of the patterns that other people think should be your paradigm, right? Think should be your worldview, etc., or how you use your time. And if it's that kids destroyed your work or interfered with it or whatever, it's like you're no longer going to be puppeteered by the interruptions of your immediate environment. That actually goes if it was financial as well. If you did take a pause in your work to address keeping bread on the table, etc., there is a sense that like you are no longer going to be puppeteered by those external things. Whatever it is, and again, reading from many different circumstances, there is a regaining of control in this card, and a kind of taking power back and saying, I now understand that my relationship to my creativity is paramount, and I'm no longer going to let it be as easily influenced by things that want to pull on my time, energy, emotional equilibrium, even my sort of scope of artistic influence, right? Because you may have had people tell you that you can't combine these certain mediums in a certain way, or you can't make that, no one will want to buy that. There always is somebody that does, right? I can tell you that, someone who buys weird shit, like a tarot made out of somebody's blood, right? Pile 2. But yeah, it's like, do what you want to do what you need to do, right? Because the days of reporting into somebody about what it is that you're making are kind of over. Whether that's in the sense of giving something to a muse in the hope that they'll treat you a little better, or whether it's in the sense of just letting go of the things in your environment that may have been inhibitive when it comes to the process of really getting in touch with your creative and imaginative self. And there is so much imagination, both in this deck and in your selection of cards. You are really somebody who can balance the practical with the deeply imaginative, deeply intuitive, with the dream time for some, I'm going to say, with getting ideas from dream space. Some of you are even lucid dreamers, and that's where you get some of your imagery, particularly because there are so many eyes and visual stuff going on. But yeah, it's going to be that stuff is no longer interrupting you. With the Ten of Swords, this is the culmination of a process that has been, frankly, quite excruciating. Even if other people don't see that it has, it's like, to you, this has been a real loss. Not being able to tap into your creativity has been really fucking difficult. And again, I identify. I've had periods, you know, between childcare versus health versus losing my sight at one point, and then work stuff, and then feeling heartbroken. All of these things have taken me away at different stages from different creative pursuits. And eventually I've come back to those things with a sense of renewal and a sense of combining different mediums in a different way based on what I've learned. And I think that is exactly what you're going through. It speaks exactly to what's happening here. You're sort of reevaluating your previous works or your previous relationship to creativity and why you do it and who you do it for, with fresh eyes because of what's happened to you on a personal level and outside of the creative sphere. The World. I think that's from Swamp Thing. I want to say it is. Seven of Cups, mask wearing. You're no longer hiding who you are as an artist, I can tell you that much. And the Ace of Pentacles. So actually this revision of how it is that you used to go about things is going to bring in an income for you. Whether it's a side hustle or a main game is up to you and up to kind of what you came for. But I feel like the message here is that the world's your oyster if you just take the mask off, right? You may have been editing your previous works more than you were generating, right? You were... this echoes Power 1 as well, where you're sort of surgically removing parts of yourself in order to be amenable to a certain audience. you were editing before you were really putting content out. And I think that that is done with. I think what you've learnt from this overall cycle is that you want to be earnest and genuine with your creative offerings, whether or not other people see them as palatable. And again, like, that's the theme of Orange, right? Is being comfortable in making kind of outsider art and stuff like that, no matter how it's received by I don't want to use the word normies, but you know what I mean, people who aren't into the same influences that you are, right? That don't have the same inspirations that you do, might look at your work and gasp. And I think that's not going to bother you as much anymore. But as a result, it's like you're going to find your niche audience. I think for some of you, that's going to be online as well, with the world card turning up, because it always says World Wide Web to me. Archaic phrase, but here we are. So it's like, take the mask off, start creating things that are true to you, even in whatever moments you find yourself in emotionally, whether they be the Five of Cups upright or reversed, it's up to you. But like, be genuine with your expression, no matter who's watching, no matter who's around, or begin to do things in a different way again if your work was actively destroyed by, say, a child or another party. And it's gonna putting that real self out there in a different way, and particularly with emphasis on the visual, I'm seeing. So if you're audio based, like, you might want to try something audio visual for the first time, or you might want to do like a collaboration with an artist based on your sounds. That's just another thing that's coming through. But doing it all in a different way is going to attract your audience to you, not just a audience. I think that's the difference with what you had before, right? You had people paying attention to your work, but they weren't necessarily who you designed the work for. And I think that's changing, and I think you're going to get some cash out of it. Clarifying that is the Page of Swords in reverse. You're being like spied on in the nicest possible way. I think like you're going to be spotted by somebody whose job it is to look out for stuff within that field. So if you're a writer, I would be entering contests with your writing and just sort of putting your stuff out there in case anyone's watching. If you're an artist, I think there may be someone interesting coming to one of your showings who can give you the kinds of deals that you never had before. If you're a filmmaker, again, like, submit to festivals you wouldn't think of, because somebody is watching you very closely, whatever this is. And if you're normally creative, like, for yourself, have a think about putting it up online somewhere and maybe monetizing it, because as much as I don't want you to ruin your own creativity by putting financial pressure on it, I also think that a lot of this reading speaks to the fact that you can make money off what it is that you're doing. And with the Page of Swords, you would have an audience, you would have an observer. It may be that you're very sort of articulate in the way that you, with your choice of deck as well, you're bringing abstraction into a place where it's easily understood by other people. I dare say a lot of you are abstract artists, or you deal with the poetic more than the sort of directly communicative. And there is somebody paying attention to you now, or will be in the near future, that knows how to market that specifically in a way that you wouldn't be able to do as effectively by yourself. So I'm not saying collaborate necessarily, but I am saying be open to new forms of distribution, new people coming in to kind of advertise you in a different way, or indeed with putting your work out there on the web in a sort of different fashion. So if you haven't had an Instagram for your art, maybe now's the time. If you haven't put your songs on SoundCloud, or you've kept it private or whatever, now's the time to really broaden that. And I think that not just your finances, but your process of creativity will flourish as a result. You can't get the Eight of Wands in a creativity reading without something coming in for you quick and fast in a positive way. And with them being paintbrushes, like, I'm thinking of the magic paintbrush story and the kind of making your reality as you go along by creating stuff. For some of you, there's like an emphasis on hypersigils. You might be into, being a comic deck as well, you might be into things like Grant Morrison, but I would certainly urge you to look up the term hypersigil and start thinking about conscious creation processes and how that reflects in your work, or doesn't, right? Particularly if your work has come from a place of pain or suffering in the past, you might want to think about what kind of hypersigil you're making in that sense. But I certainly think either way, you're going to be sort of seen by somebody who's quite crucial to all of this. You're going to be doing things in a new way. You're going to be combining different mediums that you're good at or gifted in, and all of the sort of sorrow of your previous experiences creatively, whether they be sorrowful to anybody else, they're gonna kind of crystallize into a moment where you're like, oh, that's why I needed to do that, that's what I needed to learn, and in this way I'm going to use these kinds of paints, or I'm going to use this kind of a theme, or, you know, I'm going to carry something over which wasn't for that thing, and that's why that thing had to be dissolved or destroyed, but this is the thing I'll take into my next phase as an artist or as a creator. I hope that that makes sense. Please put something down below if it did. In fact, I'm going to record a thing now. I realise that I haven't said this for either of the previous piles, so I'm recording it in pile 3 here and now, but I'm going to insert it in the other 2, where I'm going to say, if you would like to book a private reading with me, my shop is on hold at the time of uploading this, but it will be running in January with some sales. Please do consider it, bookmark it, etc. If you'd like to donate to help support the channel, that is also something that you can do down below. But if this was in any way useful to you, whichever pile you hail from, please hit like, please subscribe, please share with a friend that you think would enjoy these randomised mystery colour readings, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.